What's up, everybody? Welcome back to your favorite New York Jets subscription podcast, Badlands. I'm your host, Joe Caporoso. Extended Sunday AM coffee. It's the mini bye week. I got a ton of questions to catch up on in the Discord. If you're watching this on YouTube or you're watching this not at our War Room tier, please upgrade to War Room. Get in our Discord. Have the banter. Ask some questions. Get in the mix. You're only seeing like 30% of our content anyway, so now is the time. We're going to be that much busier down the stretch run and into the off season. Also, as a reminder, promo code Badlands on Underdog. Deposit match for any action you got going with your leagues or with your picks for Week 11. We have a Sunday today without Jets football. Great slate, though. Broncos, Chiefs, Bills, Bucks, Seahawks, Rams, Eagles, Lions. It's a good day of football. We got our pain out of the way early with, a competitive Jets loss. Connor and I are going to talk about it a bit more when we have them back on the feed Tuesday and Wednesday. So I'm going to direct most of this to the Discord questions. And, today in college football, it's just funny watching how the pendulum swings so much, right? About three-fourths of the way through the Indiana game last week, everyone was incredibly down on Mendoza. He leads the game-winning drive. Simpson plays really well. And everyone's, it's like, we kind of like Mendoza, but he was inconsistent against Penn State. But Simpson was really good. Then you get today, Mendoza was I think he was 22 or 24 with, 3 touchdowns, lighter competition, but played great. Simpson, racked up a lot of yards passing, but did not play great against Oklahoma. He had a bad interception. He had a touchdown, but was not his best game, was not as good as he was last week against LSU. And now everyone's like, well, what the hell do we do? I think let's get the full body of work. Let's see where the pick lands. And then there's a lot of time to sort out what the hell you do. And let's see who even fully declares. I expect that pendulum to continue to swing a good amount. And I don't want to make any overly firm proclamations in the middle of November when there's so much time left on different things that could change the outcome of how this draft could play out. Because I still think it's very much in play that the Jets could draft a quarterback this year or wait all the way to next year. I think as of today, it's a 50-50 thing. It's just too early to say either way. All right, questions. First one from Dana Lagondo. If they don't love Mendoza or Simpson, or they fall out of pick range for them, is there a chance they do what the Saints did with Shuck, with Say and Nussmeier, now that LSU has finally admitted he's hurt? And if they suck again, drafting a QB in the better 2027 class, I feel like I keep wavering on if it's best to take one as high as they're picking this year. It's going to depend on where they pick, right? Are they picking third? Are they picking ninth? I've got a lot of questions about this today across Twitter too. Like if they use the early round picks on other positions, let's say they go receiver and edge rusher, do you take a quarterback in round 2, round 4? Do you throw that dart? I'm not crazy about doing it because your hit rate is so unlikely when you're throwing those darts on day 2 and day 3, but it depends. It depends how the board breaks and if you think there could be some upside for a guy like Nussmeier. I don't hate the idea of it, because they're just so desperate at the position. So to just put more shots up and maybe hope something breaks through, because we know none of the 3 current quarterbacks in my mind are in any way an answer for the future. I tend to think if they decide they're not drafting a quarterback, they would not draft one in the second round. I think their first 4 picks will go to other positions. Maybe they do a day 3 dart throw, and then I think the full focus goes into 27 on drafting someone. Next one from Terrible One. A more generic question, but can one of you smart gentlemen explain what it really means for an OC to script the first 15 plays? How much is it scripted to a T? And if the first 15 plays work really well, why don't they just run variations of those 15 for the rest of the game? Bumping this one back after Thursday's success will be good to understand better. It's very common, and it's not always 15 plays. It could be 10 plays. It could be 15 plays. It could be 20 plays, where an offensive coordinator, maps out how his dream opening drive is going to go. Adam Gase this was the one thing he was really good at, right? Where you have a feel for what the defense is going to do early in the game. You line up a certain collection of plays with derivatives off them depending on the down and distance. And that also usually goes hand in hand with like a small collection of other plays that are newly installed for the particular defense, or you just like for the specific matchup. I think, an example of that would be the second pass that Mitchell dropped from the slot on third down, which was a perfect call, almost perfect execution. They just couldn't complete the pass. Like that was probably a very specific third down beater that they put in. for New England's defense. And that didn't come in the opening script, but they had it in their back pocket. And it was a perfect call. It just didn't work. Kind of similar to his out and up call or his stop and go call. They didn't catch either. It's defenses adjust, right? So you have to be able to counterpunch. So the Jets did what they did on the first drive. It worked perfectly. New England adjusted, and the Jets, they did adjust, and they had some openings. Their receivers just didn't catch the ball, or Fields was just holding it too long and not making plays. And also, part of why that opening drive worked was Fields' desire to run the football, right? Some of those yards were off script and not perfectly designed, and he just took off and made a play. He also, the best call on my mind on that drive was they got him on that option pitch on the 3rd and short. That was a nice one that they had dialed up. The slant to Mitchell, down by the end zone, worked out well. But there was a little improvisation in there too from Fields, and the offensive line was moving. They started with good field position. So it all kind of clicked together. Engstrand's shown okay signs of being able to script in certain situations. It's hard to overstate, especially after rewatching the game, how many plays they left out there, right? That's why I've been pretty bullish on him. He called a really good game, and Fields is just not seeing it and not pulling the trigger. And sometimes when Fields does see it and does pull the trigger, the receiver is just not making the play. In this case, it was Mitchell, who I really attribute three killer drops to in that game, 2 of which were on 3rd down. And there was a few others, like 4 or 5, where Fields just missed guys who were open, or he was just too slow. The screen they did try to breeze, he just floated it a little too long and never really gave it a chance. He was just really bad. And when he did run, he was effective. Still felt he left a couple of yards on the field, and it's just frustrating because that game with average quarterback play was there to be won. I know the Jets are not perfect, but it was a frustrating one on the rewatch. Certainly there are things that are a problem on defense, but I again left being the Jets have a smart play caller, and the opening script was a nice example of that and how he worked off that opening script in the rest of the first half. But you got to make the plays. Next one from Gabe. What percentage likelihood would you place on each of these possible explanations to make sense of the Jets continuing to start Fields? 1, being in love with Mendoza or Simpson and tanking it without being overt, covering for an injury to Tyrod, not wanting to be an indictment of their coaching staff, who was supposed to be an all-in approach around Fields, truly being delusional that Fields provides them the best hope of winning. I think number 2 is 60%, covering for a Tyrod injury. My guess is Tyrod has been a bit banged up. I think he was in line to start for the Bengals game, and then he was like, my leg's not there yet. I can't go. I'm curious if he's healthy enough now going into Baltimore to get that. I would say that's 60%. Number 3 is probably 25%, still believing they could get the most out of him and wanting to try certain things that he provides as a runner. And the rest I would divide up. I don't think they're thinking of tanking at all as a coaching staff. It's not how coaches are going to be wired to think. And I don't think they're naive enough after watching this tape to think that Fields gives them the best chance of winning, unless it dovetails into number 2, where they know Tyrod is 70%. And if Tyrod can't be mobile at all, you saw how the arm strength is starting to go already in that Panthers game. They might be like Tyrod's physically not there. So we just got to buy another week or 2 with Fields. And I think they believe internally that Cook is really not ready to play this year, if ever. It doesn't mean he won't get a chance at some point because they're going to run out of options. But I think that's the scenario. I think Tyrod has probably been 70% the last couple of weeks. Now maybe he's at 90 or 95% because it sounds to me from the last presser we heard that there's a real path to him starting against the Ravens. I think they got to just put Fields on ice for a few weeks, and I think they recognize that. So as it stands now, I'm expecting Tyrod to start against Baltimore. Next one from Revo Man. With the draft order as it stands now, would you trade down with Cleveland or Vegas, draft Tate, and get more capital to rebuild before QB in 27? If you could trade down and still get a player like that and add more picks, sure. If you've kind of looked at it, you're like, look, we're not going to get a quarterback. We're not giving up a ton of capital to go up and get one of these quarterbacks. There's nothing wrong with getting more dart throws, right? The Jets need an edge rusher. They need a receiver. They need a safety. They could use another interior offensive lineman. They could use another pass-catching tight end. There's no shortage of – they could use another interior defensive lineman. There's no shortage of things to throw darts at. And they have a lot of assets, but more is always better because there's a lot of work that needs to happen to the roster. So definitely not against that. Next one from Trick Play Tanner. If we assume Glenn and Muji have to make the playoffs by 2027 and keep their jobs, wouldn't you want a rookie QB in 26 so that you're not throwing a rookie into a playoff mandate situation in 27, even if the rest of the roster is good? I just can't see the media, the fan base, and Woody giving this staff grace until 2028 if we haven't broken the drought by then. It's a fair point, right? Like, we're talking about some real long waits here on top of what's already been a long wait. Now, to be fair, when you look at it that way, like what's one more year, it's easier said than done, right? If the Jets go 4-13 this year and they're on pace to going 4-13 next year, man, that seat's going to be hot. And all the patience talk is going to sound and hit a little different than it does right now. So you can't force it, right? We talked about this on War Room last week. Like, it might just not be there, right? The class might just end up being Mendoza and Simpson, and they might be out of reach with where you pick, or you might not be in love with those guys. They might not finish strong. It's just too early to tell. I think if they don't draft a quarterback, they need to go get a more competitive bridge option. You're hearing a lot of Mac Jones chatter. There's not a ton of options, right? It's like, is it Mac Jones? Is it Jimmy G? Is it like Tanner McKee? Is it Mariota? Like, these are the kind of names you're looking at. And can they be 25% better than Fields, 30% better than Fields, and allow you to hover around 500? You do that, you got a lot of work to move up to get a quarterback the year after. So it's not an easy to navigate spot. And that's why I want to wait and see where this pick lands, right? We just don't know if the Jets are going to finish 3-14 or 6-11 and how that's going to, impact who and where they pick. We don't know Moore's status officially yet. We don't know how Mendoza is going to finish out. We don't know how Simpson's going to finish out. We don't know what Arch is going to do. There's just too many variables at the moment, but it's a fair call out on the patience, because patience will run thin at a certain point, right? This is year one. They're going to get that grace. Even into year two, they're going to get some of that grace, but you could only wait, so long before you start, showing actual results in the field. Next one from Jay Shark. I admittedly do not watch college football, and I'm extremely biased towards liking mobile quarterback prospects like Sellers, mostly because I think it's a more entertaining brand of football. My knowledge of Mendoza is basically limited to what I hear on Badlands and Stock Exchange. Is Mendoza essentially a slightly more athletic Mac Jones as a prospect and how he wins? Trying to understand his NFL comp and the type of player he can be eventually. I don't think Mac Jones when I watch him play. I get a more athletic Kirk Cousins energy, right? Like, he is not a great athlete. He's not a runner. He wins from the pocket and with his arm. There's just a style and an energy and a personality that reminds me a little bit of Cousins. They're not exact comps. He reminds me more of that than Mac Jones, who actually is kind of like somehow like a little more sneakily athletic than I think most people think he is. But that's kind of the comparison that I see with Mendoza. I'm curious to see like where his official pro comps, with our guys end up being, but that's kind of the player, I see with him. Could he could the Jets see him as their version of Goff? Like, it's not that much of a stretch, maybe from a stylistic standpoint. That's another name to keep in mind. And he's played great this year, Mendoza, right? I think it's going to go week over week. They're going to go back and forth on who people like more, Simpson or Mendoza. This will be a big Mendoza week because of how he played and because of how Simpson struggled against, to be fair, a really good Oklahoma defense. Next one from Steve Wilkes Booth. Am I crazy for thinking that waiting on quarterback until 2027 is insane? We always hear how great the next year class is every year. But then you see us, Aller, Klubnik, and others end up being not that good. Additionally, there's no guarantee the Jets are picking one next year. It seems like everyone wanted to get into the top three for Caleb, Jaden May draft, and no one would budge. Even with all that draft capital they have, who says teams picking ahead of the Jets would even want to trade down, get your guy now? It's a fair argument. It's just, are they going to be in position to get their guy now, right? Are they picking second? Are they picking seventh? Is there a window to trade up this year if they feel strongly? If you feel like one of those guys is the guy and you could go get him, you take him, right? It doesn't matter what's going to come the year after because there's so many variables. You get the quarterback and you think you have a path to the guy that you think can be the guy and you can win with, you take him, right? And the Jets might have other designs, right? We are talking through a lens of they're going to definitely draft a guy. They're going to definitely draft a guy high. They might be currently mapping a way to do a trade for a veteran we're not even talking about. And this is the NFL. Nothing really surprises me anymore with some of the trades we see. So the stuff we talk about being like long shots or crazy pipe dreams, Burrow, Dak, Purdy, Stroud, who knows? One of those guys will get traded probably in the next 2 years. Might not be this year, but things happen in the NFL. And the Jets might be saying, we're going to go the veteran route. And we're going to, we're going to look in the Mac Jones type market, but we're also going to maybe go big game hunting if we're not in position to draft a quarterback that we're excited about this year, which is still very much on the table. Jets going to end up picking third and just drafting Simpson or Mendoza. That's the most straight line to getting their quarterback. And you go from there. I still think it's 50-50, though, between 26 and 27. Next one from Cava. Hypothetically, what would a Mac Jones trade look like if they wanted to just dump Fields? They do need to just dump Fields or just keep him as like a Taysom Hill type player. Mac's going to be in demand. The leaks were out already. Now that Purdy's going back in the lineup. I don't think it's, you're using day 2, day 3 picks in my mind, right? We're not going to go that crazy. Can you get him for like a third and a fifth? Can you something like that? Like that, that's kind of what comes to my mind. I don't know how many other teams are going to be lined up to trade for him. It's probably like something like that. And even that might be a little rich, but that's roughly what I'm thinking it ends up being. Next one from Alan Man. If no QB in the first 2 rounds this year, thoughts on a Malik Willis type. Malik Willis is the backup on the Packers. Would be fun to see him beat Vrabel. I don't know, man. It's going to be hard to go from Fields to Malik Willis. I think you've tried the route of a run-heavy quarterback who has some real limitations as a passer. I think this staff is going to want more of a Jared Goff type player after trying and failing with the Fields experiment this year, which was always a long shot. I don't think anybody was betting on him being the franchise quarterback, but this has been certainly the worst version of him. J Dry 2, if the Jets choose or are forced to punt on this quarterback class, who starts a quarterback in 26? It's some of the different names that we have mentioned, right? Is it Mac Jones? Is it Jimmy Garoppolo? Is it Marcus Mariota? Is it Mitch Trubisky? Is it Tanner McKee? Is it Kirk Cousins? I can't believe I'm still mentioning that name. Is it Joe Flacco? It's hard to find quarterbacks, man. Like, we've had this conversation a million times, but those were the kind of names you're looking at. The Jets didn't have a lot of great options besides Justin Fields this year, right? Like, Daniel Jones wasn't coming here, and there's no guarantee it looks like it does in Indy with Daniel Jones here. The Rodgers stuff, I think you're starting to see that situation round into shape, and they're going to probably be an 8-9 team in Pittsburgh this year. So what were they going to be with this roster, with this version of Rodgers? I don't know. I don't think that was ever a real option. So it's tough. They're going to have to get creative and, get a little lucky and stumble on the right bridge project for a year or two, which Fields was a dart throw at and it didn't work. But those are the caliber names you're going to be looking at. Next one from Mikey Man. One of the most encouraging aspects coming out of the game Thursday was the opening drive for a touchdown. If I remember correctly, the last opening drive touchdown the Jets had was against the Jags last year, but they were already down 7-0. It must have been years since we had an opening drive to go up 7-0. What things like that do you want to see more from AG, the staff, and the team these last few games, give you encouragement headed into the season? I want to see a couple turnovers. I want to see more first quarter and first half points like we just saw. I want to see them hang with the good teams they play, Baltimore, New England, and Buffalo, like they just did. I want to see them have at least one really convincing end-to-end win where they just go out and win by double digits, and it's like they're in control the entire game. Can they do that when they play Miami? I like to see them beat Miami, right? Let's see like a division win would be nice, right? I want to see continued smart game management, continued decline of penalties. I want to see aggressiveness when it makes sense and smart tactical decisions around that aggressiveness. I want to see them fix obvious problems like quarterback and try something else. So that starts like right now. And I want them to continue to do what they've done with the player personnel usage at a thing like receiver. Like, there's no reason not to like pepper Mitchell and Mechie with targets, because let's see what you have with them and get Arian Smith in that mix too. Next one from Shogun. Forgive the length of this question rant. I feel like the Jets are in a form of purgatory, and maybe it's just another primetime loss washing over me, but I don't really know how passionate I can be about a franchise with a 15-year playoff drought and is essentially setting the season on fire, and more likely the next season. I'm being hope merchant. Simpson is the only QB prospect I would take high. And even if we somehow get him, why should I believe this organization could put the requisite pieces around him to be successful? I guess I'm looking for something tangible I can latch onto the rest of the season, as wins don't seem like they'll be coming. And AG will keep throwing Fields out there. So much for how can you evaluate the other 10 guys on offense with him? I don't even get to watch Garrett Wilson be good because he got rushed back into the lineup. I don't know, maybe I'm just spiraling, but I'm lacking confidence in the current leadership. And outside of hope, I don't see a reason to be optimistic. Listen, it's normal to feel this way after losing to the Patriots in primetime, right? And seeing how good the Patriots are so quickly. I get it. It's a frustrating situation, man. There's no doubt. It's called Badlands for a reason, right? I'll say this, like, the Jets have been better the last 5 games than they were the first 5 games. And I talked about that a lot, where with Glenn, I want to see phasing and incremental progress in year 1. And I've gotten that. And now I'd like the next 5 games to be better than these 5 games. I do think this team will win a few more games this year. I think they're going to win two to 4 more games. I'll settle on 3. I think they'll finish at 5-12. Some people listen to this think that's insane. But they just beat the Bengals and Browns. I don't know why they can't beat the Saints, Dolphins, or Falcons, in MetLife in late November. We'll see. But I think you're going to have this season be like, yeah, they started 0-7, and then they went 5-5. And the coaching staff is showing signs of getting it. There have been a lot of interesting trades that I think will benefit them now and in the medium term. And it just takes, the right quarterback and the right infrastructure breaking the right way. It feels like they're miles away. And I get that, but they're 2-8. If they just had Isaiah Williams deep, this is crazy to say, right? Instead of Xavier Gibson week 1, they're 3-7. If they just trot Nick Folk out for a field goal attempt, I believe they're 4-6. And I just don't think they're like miles and miles and miles away. And I think even post Quinnen and post Sauce, there's some interesting pieces here. I like the young offensive line. Still like Jermaine and Will McDonald. They have a lot of work to do, but they have a lot of money they could spend, and they have a lot of draft picks. And even beyond the quarterback decision they eventually make, man, they're going to add – these are good draft classes at other positions, and they're going to be able to add some real studs in the first 2 rounds the next 2 years. And I think the talent roster-wide is going to scale quicker than it feels like right now, especially coming after a frustrating primetime loss. So my guess is that when you look at the totality of the season, you're going to be like, it started really ugly for this staff, but the GM made some savvy trades and the staff got better and they got their shit together a bit down the stretch. And now we got the 3rd most cap space in the league going into the offseason. We got 2 first-round picks. We got 2 second-round picks. And then, the year after, we have 3 first-round picks. Like, there's going to be some blue-chip talent dumped on this roster. And, they hopefully on this go-around, it clicks in the year 2 and the year 3 of the regime. If they don't sustain the injuries they did in 2022, we're probably not talking about this playoff drought anymore. I don't know how real of a team that was, if they were going to make a run or if Mike White stays healthy, but it happens and it will happen at some point, just like it eventually happened for Buffalo, just like it eventually happened for Cleveland, although I know they're back in a bad spot now. It's going to take a little bit. It's not going to be this season, but I think you're going to continue to see some progress in the back half of the year. All right, final one from Jay Webb. Rank the following potential quarterback options for 2027, factoring in cost: Geno, Jameis, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Joe Burrow, Kirk Cousins, Justin Fields, Anthony Richardson, Mac Jones. I mean, Burrow is number 1. If you can get your hands on Burrow, in my mind, that's incredibly exciting. I just don't think it's going to happen. Right. And I understand the concerns with his injuries, but he's Joe goddamn Burrow. You get him here, you get him here. Put CJ Stroud number 2. I would be surprised if Houston went that route, but that guy can play. He's not perfect, but yeah, he can play. Number 3 is probably Mac Jones. I think Mac Jones is fine as a caretaker for a year or 2 and the kind of guy you could win, 9 games with in the right situation. He's done that already, right? He's made the playoffs. After that, I would probably say Geno, although I don't think the Raiders are going to be able to get out of that contract, or I don't know if anyone's going to want to take that cost. So I don't know how much of an option he really is. Bryce Young, I don't see it, man. I'm not enthused about taking that on. Want nothing to do with Richardson. Jameis, maybe. Like, let's see how he plays with the Giants here. You know exactly what you're getting with him. He'll be cheap, if nothing else. Cousins, I just think, is cooked. Like, physically, I don't know if he can play anymore. I feel like he's like closer to retiring than going somewhere else to start for a season. So, not a ton of excitement with these names overall. Fields certainly can't be the starter next year. I don't even think that's a conversation to consider. Final one. There's one more in here. From Adam, you talked about Tyrod last night, understandably, but is it crazy to think if they're going to bench Fields, they should just skip to Brady Cook? I'm personally not convinced Tyrod is that much of an upgrade. Tampa was a mess until Bowles started playing soft coverage, and Carolina was a winnable game where he arguably got less out of the receiving corps than Fields does on a good day. I feel like it's a coin flip either way, and Tyrod's floor is lower than many think it is. If Cook seems remotely ready, which we don't know, does he really give our receiving corps less to work with than Tyrod or Fields at this point? I think you should try Cook at some point. Just why not? But I don't think that's that time yet. I think he's probably further away than we may think he is. Like, he was not drafted for a reason. He was battling with Adrian Martinez for a reason. I think it could be really ugly. You just throw him out there right now against the Ravens. Maybe, look, they're going to try Tyrod, see if he's healthy. And if it's really bad with Tyrod, then it's like, okay, can we start this dude out like home against the Falcons? Maybe. I think we'll see him at some point, but I do not think I think he's going to be like a Bryce Petty experience type guy. This is my expectations for him. I don't really harbor any hope there for him. That's it. A lot of Discord questions. Thank you. I mean, look, I wish there was a better perfect option at quarterback. There never is, right? It's hard. I just think if you're the Jets, man, you did what you needed to do by, trading Sauce, and yes, a new pitcher is coming soon, and traded Quinnen, where you have the money and you have the picks now, which allows you to be more aggressive, whether that is in the draft, whether that's for a veteran. You have to turn over every rock, and they have to consider about 6 different paths. And is it going to be this year? Is it going to be next year? We don't know yet. Let's get another month and a half sample size on Mendoza, Simpson. Let's get an official word on Moore. Let's see what happens with the rest of this class. Let's see where the pick lands. Let's see if there's a surprise veteran available. We just don't know. I just know Justin Fields will not be the Jets starting quarterback next year. I don't know if he'll be their starting quarterback next week. I would say that's even a coin flip. So we got a full week of content. Jet Heads Monday, me and Connor Tuesday, me and Connor with War Room Wednesday, TOJ Pod in there, Buck the Trend. Should have another film room. I'll have another mailbag or coffee at some point, and then predictions for Jets Ravens in Baltimore. And then the Jets will be back home after that for 2 straight weeks against the Falcons and Dolphins. Only 8 games left or 7 games left. Shit, just like that. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Enjoy your Sunday.